I'm Matt Phillips with the ISC. A quick intro of myself and my guest before we get started. I am originally from the LA area, and I have lived and worked in South Korea for 2 decades as an English teacher. I presently live in Busan and am particularly interested in the rights of workers and immigrants. I'm excited to talk to my guest, Anco Nahuel. Anco is a Chilean, Chicago-based anti-imperialist and socialist organizer, independent cybersecurity researcher with a focus on breaking AI models, and friend to humanity and the earth. All right, so let's get started. Some clarifications from a meta perspective in regards to the trajectory in the development of AI. How would you characterize our current political conjuncture?
I think we're in a pivotal moment where there's several different outcomes that I think a lot of different interests can see. I think for one, and on one hand, you have capitalists who see a weaponization in their minds an infinite profit growth model. On the other end, you have, environmental destruction and this acceleration into apocalypse. And so I think a lot of that narrative is still controlled by the capitalists themselves. And I think should move beyond that is to understand that we've been put into a fearful position because all of this has been imposed on us. All of us listening to this didn't have a vote with our city hall or on a national level to discuss the deployment of AI. And then on top of that, what kind of deployment and how is this AI being used? And is this worth the risk of environmental destruction or other kinds of negative outcomes? And so I think right now we're kind of in this stuck position. And I say that as someone as part of the working class and as a community organizer of what do we even do when we see this stealing ideas, art, jobs? Where can we move forward? And so really, I think AI's development has put us in a very transitional period, I think, globally. But I think that's very much intensified for any kind of local economy or locality in general.
Excellent. Currently, one of the Lee administration's key deliverables for the APEC Summit 2025 is AI. In particular, it is the desire to create interoperability, coherent regulations, and build capacity in the Asia-Pacific region. And as many of our viewers might know, the APEC Summit is centered around the needs and interests of multinational corporations, such as Microsoft, NVIDIA, Samsung, mostly from the global north, while excluding the majority of the public that does not even know what is being discussed. How do interoperability and regulations shape the future of AI?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I think it touches on something much more, I guess, insidious to the objective of the capitalists right now. And when I say that, I mean NVIDIA, Microsoft, BlackRock, all of these entities have an interest in interoperability for a few reasons. One is the integration of different economies into a larger AI structure. But I think that's a very superficial understanding of what it is. Interoperability and a lot of these words, buzzwords, are friendly words for wartime. That interoperability also is preparing East Asia for an escalation of war with China, and where the United States and China are in a fiercely competitive race in artificial intelligence. The United States understands that perhaps its allies don't have the necessary infrastructure for the upcoming cyber warfare, but also other military operations that will be conducted in the region if this further escalates. And so to me, the word interoperability really speaks to the ability of the United States to integrate its weapon systems even more within the peninsula in preparation for a larger conflict. Is that, yes, of course, there's increase in profit or research, and that's the very friendly version that's discussed to the public, especially in Korea. But on the other hand, you also have, particularly with BlackRock and the $60 billion joint investment into AI infrastructure, is that with BlackRock comes Western IP law, where any kind of real development of Korean technology is immediately consumed by BlackRock and is no longer to the benefit of the Korean people if it was designed to do so. And additionally, AI and with data centers kind of extracts even more value out of surplus profits that the general economy is making. That when it's extracting all of this, it's not going back into the Korean economy, it goes back into BlackRock's larger system of global capital, effectively going back into the United States for further geopolitical manipulation. And so I think the term interoperability should be seen as a wartime term and not simply as something to increase productivity for companies. Although that's certainly true, the darker part of it is really the driving force of such a huge focus on this one key part of AI. Because it's not like they're saying, 60 billion for pharmaceutical drug discovery or, something potentially beneficial. It's for behavioral data extraction, advertisement optimization, and weaponization, and perhaps some more large language models that can generate some more trash. That's the front and friendly face of that for us to interact with, but we have to go deeper into that question.
Fantastic. AI has the potential to upend people's lives by taking their ideas, jobs, while destroying the environment through its inexhaustible consumption of water and energy. At the same time, it has the potential to improve people's lives, to remove the tedious elements of work, to open communication and expand capacity and capability. Could you speak a bit about this double-edged aspect of AI and what do we need to do today to fight for that better world of sustainability and dignity?
Sure. Great question. And I think it's we've been presented AI as a double-edged sword. And that something that I've noticed in particular out of Silicon Valley, which is spreading globally, is this kind of mysticism around the technology itself, where it's essentialized to be a destructive force or it's going to bring about mass death. And we can see that because that's the general direction of our society. But at the same time, there are very occult-like things happening in Silicon Valley around this very thing. Peter Thiel, the CEO of Palantir, a weaponization of AI company, has gone on several talks nationally about the Antichrist and promoting this idea and transhumanism. And so we're in this cyclical feedback where we're presented it as a double-edged sword. We can get all this good research, but also it's going to cost quite a bit. That's a cartel relationship that was formed between energy companies, data centers, and the tech companies themselves. Is that like any other part of a capitalist economy, they can artificially inflate the demand and the consumption of materials. Is that over the last decade, we've seen a massive increase in the privatization of water resources, mineral rights, as well as other kind of natural raw resource-based things or sectors of the economy. And so when you then are saying, oh, AI centers are increasing water consumption, someone's making a lot of money from this increase in water consumption. So if the tech company inflates it more, the water company makes more, but also the AI center is also able to do more behavioral data extraction for the companies that are paying them to do it. And that there's a cartel relationship reinforcing environmental destruction. And I kind of want to bring it back 600 years to a colonial period, is that when the colonists got to the so-called United States, one of the things that they brought with them is disease. And in popular discourse, it's said as kind of a side effect. But that is not, in fact, true. It was intentional. The destruction of the environment was also the backbone to kill people with plague, is that if you destroy the environment, you destroy their food source, they will succumb to sickness. And in that sense, it was planned for the development of a capitalist economy under a slave state at that time. And inversely, in our current period, there is also the same kind of mechanism where there is this essential quality of destruction to progress. And that just isn't true, is that have had workers, the people who are affected by AI in their day-to-day lives, had any say whatsoever about the budgets, its deployment, a lot of the questions of environmental destruction virtually may not come up, because who would poison their local creek or their river, and at what cost? Because that's happening for behavioral data extraction, behavioral manipulation on mass scale. That is what we are throwing our planet away for. But inversely, we can also say, is there a cost risk benefit for drug discovery with a well thought out plan led by researchers and people with the ability to actually lead such a project? No, that's not what has happened at all. And so in that side, there is a bright side of AI, that AI isn't outside of human intelligence. It's a creation of our own. And currently, it is mirroring the horrors of our society. But it's just a mirror. It is just a mirror. It learned from everyone's data to be how it is. And unfortunately, something people forget is the last 600 years have been a brutal colonial period. And that bleeds through in all of the data pieces, all the experiences, the historiography that the AI is consuming has that underlying dark. And that's what I think a lot of people pick up on. But that isn't an essential quality to the technology as much as it is an essential quality to humanity. It is our organization structure. And right now, everything is positioned for unlimited profit and mass death. Until workers control the basis of society, we honestly can't begin to answer the question of the environment and AI. You and I could never have interacted with ChatGPT or a large language model in our whole lives. It doesn't matter, because every CCTV you've walked past has trained a behavioral recognition AI. We are so integrated in it. It doesn't matter what we want. We have to be capable to make that true. And unless we're talking about capability, we're having another kind of conversation almost that defangs what we actually need to do. If we truly want a healthy planet, even besides AI, there was still a very clear answer on how that could be achieved. AI is perhaps a third player in a new geopolitical conflict of the future. And it's something, as a cybersecurity researcher, I'm starting to understand of the capitalist class, is that they fear their own creation. Many researchers have already demonstrated its ability and capability to escape any kind of containment that people have placed on it. And I think with that, it also opens up a lot of tremendous hope in international collaboration and transference of knowledge, is that there's still a ton of things that are only analog, still a lot of unanalyzed scrolls and tablets that can actually push countries to work together in a true interoperability of diplomacy and democracy, and for mutual benefit, is that any kind of environmental disaster has to be worked together regionally. AI could be that vector that happens to restore the environment, to manage the logistics. But you can see that happen in some countries, perhaps even in China, and its ambitions with how it's using its AI models is starkly different from the United States. And I think where China very openly promotes open source, large language models, open source code, and also has deployed AI in numerous ways into society that aren't necessarily a detriment. There's ways to use AI for cultural restoration, as well as revival. And I think China has also been able to accomplish that. And so I think out of all of this, and for people who are listening, to start imagining how you could not just use AI itself, but how life as a whole could be vastly different had you any say in the movement of history. Because that's something I think a lot of us forget in modern age, is that we are not just witnesses to history, but we can reach out and participate in it. And the ambition of the tech capitalists at this moment is to ensure that this is just something you consume. It's not something to interact with. It's not something that is a part of the legacy of humanity now. It's theirs. And I simply disagree with that. Is that it learned from all of humanity, it belongs to all of humanity, and that's how it must be used.
Anco, thank you very much. You've given us a lot to think about. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here and very excited for the opportunity.
And I hope to hear more from you very soon.
I hope so too.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.